This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
My name is Brenda. Welcome to Horrifying History, where you will hear about the unexplained and supernatural events that have stained the pages of history. On April 20th, 1914, the wind howled against a barren stretch of land known as Ludlow in southern Colorado. It carried with it the scent of ash and something far worse. Beneath the blackened earth lay the dead bodies of men, women, and children. This was not a site of a war or some revolution. It was the site of a massacre. So get cozy, my spooky friends. Today, you will hear the story of the Ludlow Massacre and how this event affected the labor laws of today. The coal mining industry in Colorado during the 1900s employed almost 16,000 of the state's residents. This was nearly 10% of their job market. It is a large number considering the risk. Death rates of coal miners were double the national average in this state, since it was a very dangerous job. There was rampant safety negligence, poor ventilation, and it was very labor-intensive. Miners faced daily risk from unpredictable roof collapses to explosive gas pockets. The thick, dusty conditions without protection led many miners to have severe respiratory illnesses like black lung. My spooky friends, you're likely asking yourself, why would anyone work in a coal mine if it was so dangerous? People would work in the mines despite the extreme dangers, primarily due to economic necessity, a lack of other employment opportunities, and the need to support their families. Many living in the Rocky Mountains area, including Colorado, worked in the coal mines for this reason. Mining in the Rockies was slightly easier than other locations. Veins of coal were close to the surface, which provided significant and easily accessible reserves. In 1867, a man named William Jackson Palmer noticed these coal deposits. He was leading a survey team that was planning the Kansas Pacific Railway. The railway system in the United States was quickly expanding, and it created a strong demand for coal. Colorado Fuel and Iron Company quickly became the largest coal operator in the western United States and was one of the nation's most powerful companies. At its peak, they employed 7,050 people who worked almost 72,000 acres, or just under 30,000 hectares of land. John D. Rockefeller purchased a controlling stake in the company in 1902 and gave his controlling interest to his son, John D. Rockefeller Jr., in 1911. His son would manage the company from his offices in New York City. John Davison Rockefeller Jr. was an American financier. He was a reserved and deeply religious man who dedicated his life to stewardship and philanthropy. He wasn't obsessed with corporate expansion like his father. He was known to be very careful with money, have strong morals, and was devoted to his family. To many, he was the symbol of American success. But to the miners who worked for him, he was something completely different. After all, back then, coal wasn't just fuel. For many, it was about power. Miners in southern Colorado didn't just work for the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, it was the center of their lives. The company owned the houses, stores, and schools in the area. They paid miners not in real money, but in scrip. This was a certificate of currency that could only be used at company stores. It was a closed system, which resulted in the miners' wages going right back to the company, making the very rich John D. Rockefeller Jr. even richer. Miners were generally paid according to the tonnage of coal that they could produce, but were not paid for jobs like ensuring the cavern's roofs were secure. This system drove many of the miners to gamble with their lives by neglecting risk. It often resulted in accidents. Between 1884 and 1912, mining accidents killed more than 1,700 workers in Colorado, and the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company was one of the worst violators of existing mine safety rules. Miners had very little opportunity to bring forward any complaints. They lived in company towns, and all of the housing and amenities were owned by the company. This was designed specifically to install employees' loyalty and stamp out any idea of speaking out. It created anger and unrest amongst the workers. Welfare capitalists of the area believed that this could be calmed by raising the workers' standard of living while keeping it under company management. Companies did do some improvements, including bigger homes, better health care, and better access to education. But owning the entire town gave them considerable control over the employees' lives. Philip S. Fooner, who was a teacher and labor historian, described these towns as feudal domains where the company acted like they were the master of the realm. Companies dictated the laws and imposed curfews. They installed guards that were armed with machine guns and rifles loaded with soft-point bullets. They would not admit anyone into town who was a stranger to them and would not allow the miners to leave. If a miner brought any issue up, they would be evicted from their homes and removed from the town. Miners became frustrated with their dangerous working conditions and unjust rules. This is when they started to move towards unionization. Mines with unions had 40% fewer fatalities than non-union mines. Starting in 1900, the United Mine Workers of America, otherwise known as the UMWA, began organizing in western states, including Colorado. They decided to focus on the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company due to its harsh and abusive management tactics. When workers would attempt to strike, coal companies would bring in strike breakers, otherwise known as scabs, from Mexico and parts of Europe. The companies purposely hired individuals from different nationalities to discourage communication between workers, since they believed that this might lead them to organizing against the company. Even though employers tried to suppress union activity, the UMWA continued their attempts to fight for employees' rights. In 1913, the UMWA presented a list of 7 demands to the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company. These demands were recognizing the union as the workers' bargaining agent, compensation for digging coal at a ton rate based on 2,000 pounds or 907 kilograms, enforcement of the 8-hour workday law, payment for dead work, like handling impurities and adding supports to the tunnels. Weight checkmen were to be elected by workers to prevent fraud, the right to use any store, choose their homes and physicians, and a strict enforcement of the laws, like mine safety rules, and end the company guard system. All the union demanded was basic rights to a fair wage, safe conditions, and the end of the company's complete control over their lives. But the major coal companies rejected the union's demands, so the union did the unthinkable. The miners went on strike. In September of 1913, thousands of miners walked off the job, and within days, they were evicted from their homes. The men and their families moved to tent villages that were set up by the union on land leased to them. The tents were built on wooden platforms and had cast iron stoves for heat. One of these tent villages was built in Ludlow, Colorado. When leasing the sites, the union looked for locations near the mouths of the canyons that led to the coal camps in attempts to stop any strikebreaker traffic. In retaliation, the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company hired individuals from the Bolton Phelps Detective Agency to protect the scabs and threaten those who were on strike. Baldwin Phelps was well known for its aggressive strike-breaking and harassment. Employees would fire bullets at tents at random, which killed and maimed numerous people. They would patrol the camp's perimeters in an armored car that they called Death Special, which had a mounted machine gun. They used snipers to attack the camps, and this resulted in tent colonies digging pits underneath their tents to hide. Armored fights between strikers and sheriffs that were deputized to suppress the strike happened regularly. This was the beginning of the Colorado Coalfield War. As the violence started to grow, the governor of Colorado called in the National Guard to assist. At first, the Guard's arrival calmed tensions, but they were firmly on the company's side. On March 10, 1914, the body of a scab worker was found on the railroad tracks near the town of Forbes. The Guard immediately blamed the striking workers. Guard Adjutant General John Chase ordered the Forbes tent colony to be destroyed in retaliation. They launched their attack when the residents were attending a funeral for two babies who had passed away a few days previous. The residents came back to find that their tent colony was destroyed. Two babies died from exposure because of this. Life in the camps was harsh, but there was something new to be excited about: freedom. For the first time, miners were no longer under the thumb of the mining company. But the mining company did not want to lose their control. Skirmishes and intimidation continued. By the spring of 1914, the National Guard was able to break up the strike by helping the company bring in more non-union workers. They were then recalled because the state ran out of money to keep them there. The governor, along with the mining companies, decided to leave one company of guardsmen in southern Colorado since they feared the breakdown of order. They created a new group called Troop A. This troop consisted mostly of Colorado Fuel and Iron Company camp guards, and also guards hired by Bolton Phelps, who were all given National Guard uniforms. In April of 1914, the tensions exploded. The troops were stationed on Water Tank Hill, an elevated spot overlooking the camp. Major Patrick Hamrock led them. They were joined by forces under the command of Lieutenant Carl Linderfelt, who had previously been in combat with the individuals from the camp. Camp leader Louis Tychus went to meet with Major Hamrock in hopes of easing the tensions between the camp and the trigger-happy and anxious militia. April 20th, 1914 was the day after those in the camp celebrated Orthodox Easter. Major Hamrock got word that a woman was trying to find her husband, who she believed could be at the colony. He sent 3 men to go search for him, and they went straight to the camp. They presumed that the strikers captured the man and were now holding him against his will. When they arrived, Louis Tychus went to meet with Major Hamrock to discuss this issue. They were to meet at a local train station approximately half a mile or 800 meters from the colony. What Louis didn't know was that when he was gone, the militia installed a machine gun on a ridge overlooking the camp. They also took positions at a railway near the camp. During the meeting, the miners decided to act. They were armed and decided to flank a nearby wash. The militia, on the other hand, detonated dynamite as a way to notify and get support from the National Guard units that were stationed nearby. This also alerted the members of the Ludlow tent colony. The armed miners took positions at the bottom of the hill. When they did, the militia opened fire. Hundreds of miners, along with their wives and children, ran for cover. Some fled to the nearby hills, and others hid beneath their tents in the holes that they dug for protection. This is when the massacre began. The fighting continued for the entire day. The militia was joined by multiple mine guards. At sunset that day, a freight train stopped mid-track in front of the militia's machine guns. This allowed many miners and their families to board and travel to safety. When the sun went down, the militia went down to the camp and started setting fire to the tents. Flames tore through the colony, and soon everything was ash. The militia then went into the camp to search it and loot it. When they arrived, they found Louis Tychus, who returned to camp to find his people in battle. He and 2 other men were captured. They were brought to one of the commanders, Lieutenant Karl Linderfelt. Linderfelt had previously confronted Louis multiple times in the past few months. When Linderfelt saw Louis, he told his men to hold him. When they did, Linderfelt smashed the butt of a rifle on his head. The 3 men were then brought outside and executed. Their bodies were laid out near the local railroad track to be viewed by those traveling by train to see for 3 days. The militia moved them only because the railway demanded that they would be taken away. While sacking the camp, the militia made a horrifying discovery. Underneath one of the burned tents was a pit. Inside were the dead bodies of 11 children and 2 women who attempted to hide from the gunfire. Their tent was set on fire, and they all suffocated and then were consumed by smoke and fire. Approximately 25 people from the camp were killed either by gunfire, the fire that the militia sent, or by suffocating hiding in pits beneath the tents. After the massacre, the guardsmen claimed that they saw women and children withdrawing from the camp before the battle occurred. They also claimed that they wouldn't have opened fire if they knew that women and children were still there. A board of military officers released an official report about this incident. In it, they commended the, and I quote, truly heroic behavior of Linderfelt, the guardsmen, and the militia. They blamed the strikers for all of the civilian casualties, even though the dead were not just strikers. It was their families. The report also blamed the looting on the non-uniformed mine guards who came to help the militia. But the thing was that this massacre didn't end the violence. It ignited it. In the aftermath of the massacre came the 10-Day War, which was an all-out war that erupted across the Colorado coalfields. When news got out about the deaths of women and children, Union leaders issued a call to arms. Then, the coal miners began a guerrilla war campaign in Colorado's coalfields. For the next 10 days, between 700 and 1,000 striking miners attacked mine after mine, killing guards and setting buildings on fire. Dozens more would die on both sides. Hundreds of state militia were called in as reinforcements in an attempt to regain control of the situation. The war was ended after President Woodrow Wilson sent in federal troops that disarmed both sides. They arrested many militia members. When the dust settled, the Colorado Coalfield War had a death count of about 75. So, what happened next? The union ran out of money, which resulted in the strike being called off. In the end, none of the miners' demands were met. Many of the miners had been replaced and had no job to go to. 408 miners were arrested, and 332 of them were charged with murder. The only person who got convicted was John R. Lawson, who led the strike. He was convicted, but the Colorado Supreme Court overturned his conviction. On the militia side, nothing happened for the most part. While Linderfelt was found responsible for the death of Louis Tychus and the other strikers who were killed in execution style, he and all the other militia members were acquitted. When word of the massacre got out to the press, it sparked nationwide anger against the Rockefeller family. Protesters demonstrated outside their buildings, and things got so bad that John D. Rockefeller Jr. fled New York to his family's estate near Tarrytown in New York State. In early July of 1914, people planned to bomb the Rockefellers' Tarrytown estate. This resulted in a dynamite explosion in the neighborhood of East Harlem, New York. It killed 3 individuals who were fighting against the Rockefellers. The bomb plots would continue for the rest of the year. The strike and following massacre did have a lasting effect. John D. Rockefeller reached out to William Leon Mackenzie King, who was an expert in labor relations and later would become the Prime Minister of Canada. William assisted John in creating reforms for mines and their towns. They improved and paved roads, created recreational facilities, and had worker representatives on committees that dealt with the working conditions in mines, safety, health, and recreation. They prohibited any retaliation or discrimination against union workers and helped establish a company union. These changes were brought to the workers to vote on, and the workers approved the plan. John D. Rockefeller Jr. then hired public relations expert Ivy Lee, since the Rockefellers were losing public support. She developed a strategy for John to help repair it, and part of that was for him to go to Colorado and meet with the miners and their families to listen to their issues. He did what he was told, and this attracted media attention. It resulted in resolving the conflict between the company and its workers. It humanized John to his workers. The Ludlow Massacre resulted in public opinion changing about the treatment of workers. Labor movements started to gain momentum. The idea that workers deserved safe working conditions, fair pay, and the right to organize took hold in a way it never had before. The United States Commission on Industrial Relations, otherwise known as the CIR, conducted hearings about this event. They listened to the testimony from many, including John D. Rockefeller Jr. He told the commission that even after knowing that the guards under his employ had committed atrocities against the strikers, he took no action to prevent the violence. After hearing this, the commission endorsed many of the changes that the union demanded, for example, banning child labor and creating a national 8-hour workday. The 8-hour day movement, otherwise known as the 40-hour week movement, originated in Britain during the Industrial Revolution and quickly spread to other countries. Its goal was to regulate the length of a workday and prevent employers from abusing an employee's work time. During the Industrial Revolution, it was common to have a 10 to 16-hour-long workday. The work week was usually 6 days, and many of the workers were children. In the United States, employees started to demand a defined workday in 1791 when carpenters went on strike. In 1835, coal heavers in Philadelphia organized the first general strike in North America. Labor movements as early as 1836 started to fight for an 8-hour workday, and non-union Boston ship carpenters were able to achieve this in 1842. By 1864, the 8-hour workday became a central demand for many different American labor movements. In 1912, President Teddy Roosevelt, during his campaign, claimed that he would introduce federal laws to create an 8-hour workday. In 1916, the Adamson Act created an 8-hour workday and ordered employers to give employees additional overtime pay. But it wasn't until after the Fair Labor Standards Act was introduced in 1937 that a 40-hour workweek was mandated, and employers were required to pay additional overtime pay for anything over that. The Fair Labor Standards Act also restricted the employment of children. This came into effect under President Franklin D. Roosevelt's administration. Provisions were made to prohibit employers from hiring children under the age of 16 in dangerous occupations and to protect their educational opportunities. It also prohibited children from working in areas that risked their health and safety, limited hours in certain industries, and allowed children between the ages of 16 and 17 to work a 40-hour week in non-hazardous occupations. These laws were the start of employment reform in the United States and labor laws that are still protecting workers to this day. Today, the echoes of the Ludlow Massacre are still with us. Every time workers go on strike, every time unions are negotiating new contracts, every time that workplace safety is discussed, it is because of events like the ones that happened in Ludlow. It is a reminder of what can happen when power goes unchecked and when human lives become expendable. But behind these events were not just workers. It was their families and children. The miners wanted nothing more than just to be safe and treated fairly, but instead, their names were carved into a memorial as their story has been carved into history. Thank you for joining me today. What are your thoughts about the Ludlow Massacre? Let us know your thoughts on Facebook at Horrifying History, Instagram and Threads at Horrifying_history, X at Horrifying HIST1, or Blue Sky by searching for Horrifying History. If you haven't already done so, please remember to subscribe to our podcast. When you do, not only do you let more people know about our show, but you also download our next episode on its release day. It's a great way not to miss our next episode. A Crown, a Cult, and a Delusion, the Romana Didelot story. To learn even more about Horrifying History, you should visit our website. When you're there, you will find links to all of our social media and to our YouTube channel, which features not just our podcast episodes, but also additional history-based videos for your enjoyment. We also have a blog that's filled with spooky topics and episode updates to read up on. On top of this site is the home to our fan club, which offers excellent perks like your own feed to listen to our show ad-free, access to new episodes a week early, and a new bonus episode each week. It is also home to our store that's filled with spooky merchandise that you guys will love. For our fan club members, you will receive a permanent discount in our store as long as you remain a fan club member. You can find all of this and more at horrifying-history-shop.fourthwall.com. Thank you for joining me, my spooky friends. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.
If you are fascinated by the darker side of human nature, especially stories you never hear in Western media, let me introduce you to Dark Asia with Megan. I'm Megan, a former journalist, and my specialty is telling dark, real stories from across Asia. From notorious Asian serial killers and unexplained murders, to cases involving black magic, cults, curses, and belief systems that blur the line between crime and the supernatural. These aren't just scary stories. I break down the culture, psychology, and social realities behind them. You can listen to the podcast or watch full deep dives on my Dark Asia with Megan YouTube channel. Search Dark Asia with Megan, available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.